I pulled a harmless prank on my teacher, and it turned into a disaster. My name is Logan. I'm 27 now, but this happened when I was 16, a junior in high school in a suburb outside Seattle. I'm posting from a throwaway because I'm not proud of this, and some of the people involved still live in that town. I used to be the funny kid, not the class clown who gets sent out every day, more like the guy who could make teachers laugh if they were the right kind of teacher. Comedy was my survival tool. My parents were going through a messy divorce. Money was tight, and my house felt like everyone was walking around carrying glass. At school, if I could make people laugh, I could pretend I wasn't anxious. The teacher in this story was Mr. Klein. Late 30 seconds. History teacher. The kind of teacher who actually liked his subject and tried to make it interesting. He didn't just assign textbook pages, he did debates, small group projects, random fun facts, and he remembered students' names. He also had one fatal trait: he was approachable. And teenagers don't always treat approachable like a human quality. Sometimes we treat it like an invitation. Mr. Klein would joke with us. He'd roast us gently when we were off task. He ran the after-school debate club and actually stayed late to help kids practice. He was one of the few teachers who seemed to genuinely enjoy being there, which is why it still makes me sick that we made him regret it. It started during a week when our grade was obsessed with pranks. Not dangerous ones, just dumb adolescent stuff. Sticky notes on desks, fake announcements, swapping classroom clocks, so the teacher thought time was off. It was spring, the weather was warming up, seniors were acting like they owned the building, and admin was already tired. In our friend group, the ringleader was a guy named Mason. Mason was charismatic in a way that made trouble feel like a sport. He wasn't stupid, he just liked being watched. Mason had a personal issue with Mr. Klein because Mr. Klein had caught him cheating on a quiz and made him retake it. Mason acted like this was oppression. So one day in the cafeteria, Mason said, "We should prank Klein." I remember someone saying, "He's cool though." Mason smirked. "Exactly. He'll laugh." That line mattered. Because when you convince yourself the target will laugh, you can excuse almost anything. I asked, "What kind of prank?" Mason leaned in, lowering his voice like we were planning a heist. "We're going to make him think his laptop is hacked." Mr. Klein used his laptop for everything: slides, videos, attendance, assignments. The plan was to mess with his desktop background and make a fake system warning pop up, something silly. Something that would make the class laugh and maybe give Mr. Klein a story to tell later. Even writing that now, it sounds childish. It was. But it also sounds contained. What I didn't understand at 16 is that contained is an illusion when you involve technology and people who don't fully think through outcomes. I hesitated. Isn't that, like, actually messing with his computer? Mason waved it off. "It's not hacking. It's just a prank. You're good with computers, right? You can make it look real." I wasn't good with computers. I just knew how to change settings and edit images, but Mason had that way of making you feel like you had a role to play in his chaos. I said, "Maybe." My friend Tessa said, "Logan, don't. Admin's already on edge." Mason rolled his eyes. "You're scared." And there it was, the teenage trap. If you say no, you're scared. If you say yes, you're fun. I said yes. The plan was simple. When Mr. Klein stepped out for a second, he often left to grab papers from the printer. Someone would sneak to his desk and plug in a USB drive to trigger the fake pop-up. Even as I write this, I'm leaving out details on purpose. I'm not going to explain exactly how it was done. I don't want anyone copying it. But it involved a pre-made image and a timed display. Nothing that permanently damaged anything. The day we did it was a Friday. Mr. Klein started class, joked about the upcoming test, and then stepped out to print something. Mason nodded at me like, "Go." My stomach was tight, but I moved fast. I did the thing. Mason sat back in his seat like a king watching an execution. Mr. Klein came back in, sat down, and opened his laptop. The fake warning popped up. At first he frowned, then he clicked. It didn't go away. His frown deepened. Someone in the back started giggling. Mr. Klein's voice changed. "Guys," he said, trying to stay calm, "did someone mess with my computer?" People laughed louder. Mr. Klein stood up, face flushing. "This isn't funny," he said. That moment should have been our stop sign. When the target says it isn't funny, you stop. But Mason said loudly, "It's just a joke, Mr. K." A few people laughed. Mr. Klein looked around the room, eyes landing on me for a split second. I don't know if he suspected me or if he was just scanning faces, but I felt my stomach drop. He took a breath, closed his laptop, and said, "Everyone, take out a piece of paper. Pop quiz." The room groaned. Mason shot me a look like worth it. I felt relief because the prank seemed done, contained. He wasn't screaming no one got demonstrating. He'd gotten us back with a quiz. Classic teacher move. After class, Mr. Klein stopped Mason at the door. I heard him say quietly, "This needs to stop." Mason nodded like an angel. Then we walked into the hallway and Mason laughed. "He's so mad." I remember feeling uneasy. Not guilt exactly, more like awareness that we'd crossed a line and were pretending we hadn't. And then someone did the thing that turned a childish prank into a disaster. Someone filmed it. A student I barely knew, Eli, had recorded Mr. Klein's reaction, especially the part where he looked stressed and said, "Did someone mess with my computer?" Eli posted it to a private Snapchat story that wasn't private at all. Within hours it was circulating, with captions like, "Mr. Klein got hacked. Old man can't computer. Bro is panicking." By Monday morning, the video had jumped platforms. People in other grades were quoting it. Teachers were hearing about it. Admin was hearing about it. But the worst part was one version of the video had been edited, cropped, and cut to remove context, so it looked like Mr. Klein was yelling at students for no reason. A rumor started. Mr. Klein lost it in class. Then another rumor started. Mr. Klein keeps weird stuff on his laptop, and that's why he panicked. That rumor, completely baseless, spread faster than anything. Because people love scandal more than truth. And the next time we walked into history class, Mr. Klein wasn't there. Instead, the principal was. And she said, "We need to discuss what happened Friday." That's when I realized the prank wasn't over. It was beginning. The principal, Mrs. Hargrove, stood at the front of the classroom with a folder in her hand. Behind her was the vice principal, and I swear half the class suddenly remembered how to sit up straight. Mrs. Hargrove said, "I'm going to ask a few questions. I expect honesty." Nobody moved. She continued, "On Friday, something was done to Mr. Klein's laptop without his permission. A video of his reaction is being shared online. Additionally, there are rumors circulating that are inappropriate and harmful." My chest tightened. Harmful. That word didn't belong in what we thought was a joke. Mrs. Hargrove asked who had access to the laptop. Mason, of course, raised his hand and said, "It was just a harmless prank." The principal looked at him. "Harmless?" she asked. Mr. Klein's laptop contains student records, attendance, grades, personal information. Tampering with it is not harmless. Mason's face changed slightly. He hadn't considered that. Then she said, "Mr. Klein has been asked to step away from the classroom while we investigate." The room went silent. I felt sick. It wasn't detention. It wasn't a stern talk. It was an investigation. That day, admin pulled students one by one. They asked about the prank. Who planned it? Who touched the laptop? Who filmed? When it was my turn, I walked into the office with sweaty palms and a throat so dry I could barely speak. Mrs. Hargrove asked, "Did you interact with Mr. Klein's laptop on Friday?" I tried to lie. I started with, "I don't know." Then she slid a paper across the desk. It was a screenshot from the video. The angle clearly showed me leaning over the desk. My stomach dropped. I whispered, "Yes." She nodded slowly, like she was disappointed but not surprised. "Tell me exactly what you did." I explained it in vague terms. I said it was a fake warning pop-up. I said it wasn't meant to damage anything. Mrs. Hargrove asked, "Did you have permission?" "No," I said. She wrote something down. Then she asked, "Do you understand why this is serious?" I nodded, throat tight. She said, "You will be receiving consequences, and we will be contacting your parents." I left the office feeling like I was floating. By lunchtime, everyone knew. Mason tried to spin it as they're overreacting. Eli, who filmed, claimed it wasn't his fault because it was funny. But the tone changed. People weren't laughing as much, because now there was risk, and teenagers love pranks until pranks have consequences. After school, my mom showed up to pick me up. She wasn't the yelling type. That was worse. She drove in silence for 5 minutes, then asked quietly, "What were you thinking?" I didn't have an answer. At home, my dad, who rarely got involved in school stuff, sat me down and said, "This could follow you." I rolled my eyes, because I was 16 and thought adults always exaggerate. Then he said, "Your teacher is being investigated." Do you understand what that can do to someone's career? That sentence hit differently. Because it wasn't "you're in trouble," it was "you hurt someone." The next day, Mr. Klein still wasn't in class. We had a substitute. No one joked. Even Mason was quieter. Then the rumors got worse anyway. Someone had started whispering that the investigation wasn't about the laptop, it was about Mr. Klein talking to students inappropriately. Suddenly, old moments got reinterpreted. A joke he made months ago was now creepy. A compliment about a student's debate performance became flirting. It was sick, and it spread because the internet loves a villain. I remember sitting in the cafeteria hearing people say, "I heard he's getting fired," and my stomach twisting. I texted Tessa, "This is getting out of hand." She replied, "It already is." A week later, we got an email from the school. Students were reminded about digital harassment and spreading rumors. They said anyone sharing edited clips could face disciplinary action. Eli deleted his post, but by then it was everywhere. Then my mom got a call from the school counselor. They wanted to speak with me about accountability and decision-making. That's how schools say, "You messed up and now we're trying to make you feel it." I went to the counselor's office. She asked me why I did it. I said the truth. I wanted to be funny. She asked, "At whose expense?" I couldn't answer. After that session, I walked past the teacher's parking lot and saw Mr. Klein's car still there. He was in the building but not teaching. Something about that broke me. It was like seeing the shadow of the harm. I asked my friend who was in debate club if Mr. Klein was okay. He said, "He's not running debate right now." That hit hard. Debate club was his thing, the thing he cared about. And now it was paused because of us. 2 weeks after the prank, I got called back into the principal's office. Mrs. Hargrove said, "We've concluded the part of the investigation related to the laptop. There was no evidence of permanent damage or data breach." I exhaled for the first time in days. Then she added, "But the rumors that followed have caused serious harm. Mr. Klein has requested a transfer." My throat closed. "A transfer?" I whispered. "Yes," she said. "He no longer feels he can effectively teach here." I felt like someone had dropped a weight into my stomach. Because that meant we didn't just make him uncomfortable. We made him leave. Mrs. Hargrove looked at me and said, "This is why pranks can't be treated lightly. You don't get to control what people do with your actions once they're in the world." I nodded, eyes burning. Then she said, "You have an opportunity to take responsibility, not to erase what happened but to acknowledge it." She offered to pass along a letter if I wrote one. I went home and sat at my desk staring at a blank document for an hour. What do you even say to a teacher whose life you disrupted? Then my dad said something that stuck. "Don't write it to get forgiven. Write it because it's true." So I wrote. And I thought that would be the end. But it wasn't. Because years later, I learned what that prank did to him outside the school walls. And it made my regret feel brand new. I wrote Mr. Klein a letter. Not a dramatic, poetic thing, just a direct apology. I admitted I touched his laptop. I admitted it was wrong. I said I was sorry for the stress and for contributing to a situation that got out of control. I gave it to the principal. She said she'd pass it along. I don't know if he read it. I never got a reply. Mr. Klein transferred schools mid-year. We got a new teacher who didn't joke with us, didn't run debate club, and treated everyone like potential problems. And honestly, we deserved it. By senior year, the prank was old news. Mason joked about it like it was a legendary moment. Eli bragged about going viral. People moved on. I tried to move on too. I graduated. I went to community college, then transferred, got a normal job. The story became something I told as a cringe memory. Remember when we messed with that teacher's laptop? Then, 5 years later, I ran into someone who made it real again. I was home visiting my parents and stopped by a coffee shop. A woman behind me in line said, "Logan?" I turned around and recognized her. Mrs. Patel, a teacher who used to supervise debate club. She smiled politely, but her eyes were cautious. "How are you?" "Good," I said. How are you? She hesitated. I'm okay, she said. Then she added, Do you ever think about Mr. Klein? My stomach dropped. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. Sometimes. Mrs. Patel sighed. He stopped teaching, she said. I felt my chest tighten. What? She nodded. After he transferred, he tried again. Another school, new start. But the rumor followed. Someone found the clip. Parents complained. Admin got nervous. My throat went dry. You're kidding. I wish I was, she said. He left education. Last I heard, he works in corporate training now. I stood there holding my coffee like it weighed 50 pounds. Mrs. Patel looked at me gently. I'm not telling you this to punish you, she said. I'm telling you because you're not a kid anymore, and I think you should understand the scale. Scale. That word echoed in my head all day. Because I'd always framed it as, we made a teacher uncomfortable, he transferred, the end. But the truth was, we contributed to a narrative that destroyed his sense of safety in his career. And once someone is labeled, it follows them. I went home and cried in my car like a child. That night I searched Mr. Klein's name online, not to dox him, just to see if he existed publicly anywhere. I found a LinkedIn profile, corporate training consultant, different city. No mention of teaching, no mention of debate club. It was like a whole identity had been erased. I stared at his profile photo, older now, tired eyes, and felt my stomach twist. I wanted to message him, but what would I even say? Hi, I'm one of the kids who helped ruin your career, hope you're well? So I did nothing, which is, ironically, what I'd done back then too. I watched and hoped it would stop. Then I got an unexpected message from Mason. Mason had found Mr. Klein's profile too, apparently. He DM'd me, Bro, remember that prank? That was legendary. I stared at the message and felt something snap. It wasn't legendary. It was cruelty. I replied, He quit teaching. It wasn't funny. Mason responded, Not our fault. He was soft. That made me see Mason differently, not as a fun troublemaker, but as someone who never learned empathy. I blocked him. Then I decided to do something uncomfortable. I reached out to Mr. Klein. I kept it short. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't trauma dump. I wrote, Hi, Mr. Klein. This is Logan from your history class in 2015. I was involved in the laptop prank. I apologized back then, but I want to apologize again as an adult. I understand now how much harm the situation caused. You didn't deserve it. I'm sorry. I stared at the message for 10 minutes before hitting send. He didn't reply for 3 days. Then he replied with one sentence, I appreciate you taking responsibility. That was it. No anger, no lecture, no forgiveness, just acknowledgement. And for some reason that hurt more than if he'd cursed me out. Because it reminded me he was always the adult in the room, even when we weren't. I thought that would bring closure. It didn't. Because once I opened that door, more memories came back. Other times we'd joked at adults' expense. Other times we treated people like props in our entertainment. And I started wondering, why did I need to be seen as funny that badly? Therapy answered that eventually. I needed control, because my home life felt uncontrollable. Humor was power. But my power came from someone else's discomfort. So, yes, the prank went too far the moment Mr. Klein said, This isn't funny, and we didn't stop. But it also went too far because we lived in a world where a short clip and a rumor can ruin someone. And we fed that machine. Now here's the part that complicates things. A few months after Mr. Klein replied, I got a message from Eli, the guy who filmed. He wrote, Hey, I heard you reached out to Klein. Can you tell him to message me? I want to apologize too. I stared at it, torn. Part of me thought, good, Eli finally gets it. Another part of me thought, Eli wants absolution. I replied, You can message him yourself. Don't make it my job. Eli said, I don't know how to find him. I almost laughed. He found him well enough to spread him. That conversation made me realize another truth. Some people only feel regret when consequences land in their lap. I at least wanted to be better than that. So, when did the prank go too far? For me, it went too far when I realized it followed him beyond that classroom. And I couldn't undo it. All I could do was stop being the kind of person who treats others like material for a laugh, and warn younger people without turning it into a how-to. which is why I'm posting this now, in case anyone else needs the reminder. If your prank relies on someone's humiliation to be funny, it's not a prank. It's cruelty with a punchline. After I heard Mr. Klein had stopped teaching, I couldn't stop thinking about other teachers from that time, people I'd mentally filed as strict or annoying, never as humans. I started volunteering at a youth program in my city helping kids with homework, not because I thought it would balance karma, but because I needed to be around the kind of work I'd helped undermine. And it was humbling. Kids are loud, impulsive, and constantly testing boundaries. Teachers and mentors aren't robots, they're people doing emotional labor all day. I started seeing Mr. Klein's patients differently. Then something happened that forced me to confront my past in a public way. My old high school posted a throwback montage on their social media photos of clubs and events across the years. In one clip, there was Debate Club. Mr. Klein appeared for about 2 seconds, laughing with students. In the comments, someone wrote, "Isn't that the teacher who got exposed?" Exposed, like he'd been caught doing something. The comment thread began to spiral, even years later. I felt sick, and I realized the rumor still lived. It didn't matter that it was false. It lived because it was entertaining. So I did something that terrified me. I commented under my real name. I was in the class where the laptop prank happened. Rumors went way beyond reality. Mr. Klein didn't deserve what happened. Please stop spreading false narratives. My hands were shaking when I posted it because internet comments are a minefield. People love to attack. Some people replied positively, "Wow, didn't know. Thanks for clarifying." Others replied, "You're covering for him." Sure, Logan. But the point wasn't to convince everyone, it was to stop being silent. Later that day, I got a DM from Mrs. Patel. "Thank you," she wrote. "People forget teachers are human." Then I got a DM from someone else, Mason. "You're such a simp," he wrote. "Stop apologizing for everything." I blocked him again. That night, I told my partner about all of it. She listened and said, "I'm glad you grew, but you have to accept you can't fix what you broke." That sentence landed. Because it's true. We love stories where someone apologizes and everything becomes clean again. Life doesn't work like that. Harm leaves residue. So my focus shifted, not fix, but prevent. I started talking to younger cousins about online behavior when they made jokes about teachers. I didn't lecture. I just told a story. A prank went wrong and a teacher had to leave. I didn't name Mr. Klein, but I described the feeling watching adults lose their careers because kids wanted a laugh. It worked more than I expected. Because teenagers don't listen to moralizing, but they do listen to consequences. Then, one day, Mr. Klein emailed me again. He said, "Just saw your comment on the school page. Thank you. That rumor hurt more than the prank." I stared at the email for a long time. Because that was the heart of it. The prank was embarrassing. The rumor was identity damage. I replied, "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I didn't understand." He replied, "Most people don't at 16, but some people never understand. You did." That's the closest thing to forgiveness I've gotten, and I don't feel entitled to more. But it still leaves the question, what do you do with guilt that can't be repaid? Therapy calls it productive guilt, the kind that changes your behavior rather than eating you alive. I'm trying to keep it productive, because I can't go back and stop 16-year-old me from being desperate for laughs, but I can stop 27-year-old me from being silent, and I can tell the truth when people try to rewrite it. Still, when people ask the question, when did a prank on a teacher go too far? I think about something specific. Not the pop-up, not the detention. I think about Mr. Klein sitting at his desk, closing his laptop and saying, "This isn't funny." That was the moment we had a choice. We could have stopped. We could have apologized immediately. We could have shut down the rumor machine by telling people, "No, it was a stupid prank." We didn't. And once you let a lie spread because it's entertaining, you become part of it even if you didn't invent it. That's the lesson I wish someone had drilled into my head when I was a teenager. You don't need to be the person spreading a rumor to be responsible for it. You just need to be the person who watches and laughs. And yes, I watched and laughed, which is why I still feel guilty. So if you're reading this and you're still in school, if you want to be funny without making someone unsafe. If you want to prank someone, pick something that doesn't touch reputation, job security, or fear. And if the person says, stop, you stop. That's where it becomes too far. I'm posting this in Aita-ish form because I still don't know how to categorize myself. Was I the villain? A dumb kid? Both? I've carried this story like a stone in my pocket for years. Sometimes it feels lighter because I've tried to do better. Sometimes it feels heavier because I realize the true scale. If you're asking for the exact moment the prank went too far, here's my honest answer. It went too far the second it left the room. The second it got filmed. The second it got edited. The second strangers used it to project a narrative onto a teacher they didn't know. The second we allowed a human being to become content. And it went too far again every time someone repeated the rumor. I don't think teenagers understand how fragile adult lives can be. How much reputation matters in careers like teaching. How one allegation, true or false, can damage trust. And I didn't understand how my involvement would echo. So, Aita? I touched the laptop. I enabled Mason. I didn't tell people to stop spreading the video until years later. I didn't go to Mr. Klein and say, I did it in that moment. I waited. I hid. I hoped it would go away. And Mr. Klein paid the price. I can say I was 16 all day. It doesn't change what happened. But I can also say, I'm not 16 anymore. I don't participate in mob humor. I don't share videos mocking teachers. I don't laugh when someone else becomes a target. And when I'm around younger people, I try to normalize accountability. Here's what I'd tell my 16-year-old self now. Being funny isn't worth being cruel. Being liked isn't worth being feared. And if you feel powerless, don't take power from someone who didn't hurt you. Because that's what we did. We felt bored and wanted control, so we took it from a teacher who was trying to do his job. Mr. Klein is doing fine now, as far as I know. He has a career. He's not ruined. But he lost something important, the work he cared about. And that loss is on us. So when does a prank go too far? When it stops being about a laugh and starts being about a target. When it messes with safety, dignity, or livelihood. When someone says this isn't funny, and you keep going anyway, that's when. If you're reading this and you've done something similar, maybe not exactly this, but something where you joined in because everyone else was, here's the best advice I can give. Own it early. Because the longer you wait, the more harm spreads without you. And the longer you wait, the more you become someone who only speaks up when it's convenient. I don't want to be that person anymore. So, Reddit. Aita for reaching out years later instead of trying to track him down immediately back then? Did I do the right thing by speaking up publicly now, or is it too little too late? I can't undo what I did. But I can choose what I do next. And I choose not to be silent. So, when does a prank go too far? And Aita for what I did even if I've tried to make amends? If you want more Reddit-style long stories, subscribe.